So that was Joe Castillo, sand artist extraordinaire. See, we were serious about it being a sandbox game. So I'm Dave Georgeson. I'm the Director of Development for the EverQuest franchise. And it is August 2nd, and it's afternoon. So it's finally time to talk about EverQuest Next. As most of you know, it was about 2 years ago that SOE decided to reboot its EverQuest Next project in favor of striking out in entirely new directions. What we didn't tell you at the time was why. It was because enough is enough. Enough of the same game already. It's time to get some new ideas into this genre. And if somebody was going to do it, it should be EverQuest. Again. So we spent the first 6 months brainstorming out what we might be able to do, how far we could go, and what sort of limits we might have. And as we talked, the ideas started to piece together into a whole that was, well, it was really intriguing to us. So we spent the next year prototyping, trying to figure out which of our crazy ideas might actually work. And the cool thing was most of them did. So we're at the point right now where we're building something that's both heroic and social. We've taken everything we know about games and MMOs in general, and we're fusing the best parts into an original shape, well, that we hope will create triumph and passion in the gamers that play it. And that's you guys. So let's talk about that game. And the way that I want to start talking about that game is by talking about the world of Norath. When we decided to build this game and to take it all the way down to its core and start all over again, we decided to go ahead and do that with everything, including the lore. So we've taken a tip from, what they've done recently with the Star Trek franchise. J.J. Abrams kind of retooled some stuff. And what we decided to do was to maintain the names and the places and stuff that you've come to love over time, but tell new stories, interconnect them in different ways. So as you explore through EverQuest Next, as you explore through this new Norath, you're constantly finding stuff that will surprise and amaze you. Now, that's the lore, and I'm going to leave most of that to the panels, but I wanted to take just a moment to let you know that we're going to be releasing new fiction on a regular basis as we go through the development process. And in fact, later today, the first of these stories will appear on the website, everquestnext.com. And you can download The Last Stand of the Tear Doll, which will have a lot to do with the sand painting you just saw. And I want to introduce, if some of the authors that are here could stand up right now, please. These are some of the authors that are writing our stories. In fact, they'll be outside and you can talk to them after the show here. Maxwell Drake wrote the first story. Thank you, guys. Anyway, so you also want to see what the game's going to look like. Well, to tell you how the game is going to look, I want to start with concept art. And in fact, the first concept pieces that I'm going to show you, some of them are areas that you know, and some of them will be new. The first area that I'm going to show you, the first two areas, are going to be subterranean concepts. This first one is a painting of what it might look like underneath Everfrost. Now, as you can see, we were doing treatments of color and lighting and things like that. And when we pushed this concept over to Lavastorm, it looked like this. Now, of course, we didn't just do subterranean stuff. We went for overground stuff too, of course. And this is how Lavastorm will look overground. And we figured that as long as you were going to call it Lavastorm, well, it ought to, have a lava storm once in a while. So that's what we're doing, and we're going for a much more dynamic, exciting look, and more adventurous as you go through it. We also want to concentrate on finding really epic grandeur moments as you move through the world. You'll keep finding things that are just majestic and mighty. We're doing remakes of areas that you haven't seen since the original EverQuest. This is the way Oasis will look. And this is a good shot of Firot. Now, you're going to be seeing a lot more of Firot today as we go through it. But I also wanted to let you know that we're bringing new areas to the game as well. This is a concept painting of Ashfang. And just to prove that we actually have been doing something for the last couple of years, I'll show you a couple of screenshots here before we get to the actual game. This is the way Ashfang looks in the game right now. So this kind of detail, the vegetation, the lighting, and everything like that is exactly the way that we want things to be moving. And this is the way a subterranean lava chamber might look. In fact, does look in the game. Now here's the sweet one. This is the way Firot looks. And we really like the lighting. But I don't want to just show you still screenshots. We also, of course, you all want to see what the game looks like inside the game. So this is the game. We're going to run you through some flyovers and stuff before we start to show you action. The first fly through is of Ashfang. So this is the way the game looks as you move through it right now. As you can see, we're doing a lot of detail, the rock strata, the lighting, everything like that. One of the wonderful things about working at SOE is that we get to utilize the technology that other people have created before us. And so we're using the Forge Light engine that was created for PlanetSide 2 in this game. Of course, it's been heavily modified, but you can see that the lighting and the details and stuff as you go through the game are incredible adventure experiences. Yeah, we like the way that's coming out quite well. And then this is Firot. The lighting through the trees, the feeling of a heavy humidity, all of these things contribute to an adventuring experience where you never know exactly what's going to be over the next rise or what's through the next archway. And we're going to be visiting this a lot as we go through today's presentation. But yeah, we definitely like where this is going. How do you like it? Great. Well, then I'll show you a little bit more of our tech. We, of course, have a really cool time of day system, and that has some really, really huge benefits as we're adventuring through the world. Here's a shot of that. So this is all time sped up so that we can show you the whole day as it progresses. But you can see that as the sun moves through the sky, the lighting changes all the way around the world. And as the sun sets, we see a true night, which is a really exciting thing to adventure through. Okay, so that's the way our world looks. Now there's a lot more to it than just pretty pictures. So what we want to do is then now take you to the way that we developed our characters and the different races of Norath. So we started out looking for something of a more heroic fantasy look this time around. We wanted to make sure that we had a kind of a rough and tumble look. We wanted to have a real dynamic kind of movement system, and we wanted people to feel natural when they were being acrobatic and showing wear on armor and things like that. So the look we started to nail down was this kind of thing. So as we started out, oops, screwed up my own stuff. So anyway, we started out looking at the humans and looking at the way that they were shaped and the way that their armor stuff was, so that we had more of that rough and tumble look. And then we decided to take that and to extrapolate it through all the different other races of Norath. The first one that we looked at was the dwarves, and since I've already kind of screwed that up, we'll go ahead and show that to you. So the dwarves are very robust, very stern, occasionally surly, but lots of character. And then when we got around to doing the elves, we wanted to make sure that they were kind of the almost diametric opposite, so that they were an extremely beautiful race. And this is the way the elves look in a game now. We wanted to make sure that dark elves had their own look, very distinctive, and so we gave them some really deep lore also, which we'll talk about more in the panels. And this is the way dark elves look in the game. And then we gave a huge facelift to a couple of other races that you're familiar with. We wanted to make sure that the ogres were a lot more intelligent this time around, more organized, much more militaristic. And so that's the ogres. And then I'm only going to show one more race for right now, but I wanted to show you the way the Karens have been remade. Some of you have seen, of course, the Gabor painting, but this is the way that the more lionish Karens look inside the game now. And you'll see that in action in a few minutes. So then we wrapped around back to the humans again, and we finalized the look and feel of the way that their features were. Because one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that this was a really robust role-playing game. That the people that like to do machinima or messing around with their friends and having fun and telling jokes and stuff like that could show that expressiveness on their face. So we took care to exaggerate a couple of the features that would allow you to see that kind of expressiveness even at a distance. The eyes, the mouth, they're exaggerated just slightly. And when you trigger manual emotes or use SOE emote, you get this kind of expressiveness range inside the game. Now, not everybody is familiar with SOE emote because it's only in EQ2 right now. But SOE emote, just to recap for everybody, is this really cool tech we have where you can have your webcam on your monitor, and as it faces your face and you move your face in real time, so does the character's face move inside the game. And that kind of effect, whether you're triggering manual emotes or using SOE emote, it looks like this. And I think you'll see that expressiveness like this just does not exist in any other game. There you go. Okay, so that's the way our faces looked, and that's the way that our characters looked, but we needed to make sure that you had lots of good gear, lots of great ways to express the way that you want to look. So in EverQuest Next, the way that you look is entirely under your control. If you decide that what you want is a chainmail bikini, then that's what you can wear. If you want full plate or you want really cool clothes, that's what you can wear also. So we have developed a system by which we could create all kinds of stuff at a really rapid rate and at a very high detail level. We think that we like where that's going. And when you take that kind of detail level and you combine it with cloth and hair movements, you get this kind of effect and the characters start to really come to life. So let's see those characters in game. Now what I'm about to show you is the first time anybody has seen these characters in game. So we'll start with the human female. And she's a wizard, so we gave her a name because we don't like calling her the human female all the time. So this is Jelena in Ashfang. And then we played a few emotes so that you could see what she looked like when she was actually doing those facial expressions. We really like the way that's looking. We also wanted to show you the Karen male. And this is, of course, we gave him a name. This is Kishar. And the Karens have some pretty cool emotes. This is my favorite. Oh, yeah. So that's the way our characters look in game. Now we wanted to make sure that when you're moving around from point A to point B in the world, that it was a really fun experience. I mean, we do a lot of walking in these games because we're exploring all the time. So we wanted to make sure that that was a really, really exciting experience for you. So what we're doing is we're adding a parkour-like, what we call heroic movement system into the game. And that means that as you're moving through the world and you encounter a low obstacle, you can just sort of vault over the top of it without any effort, or slide down a hill, or be able to jump up and grab a ledge and pull yourself up, or rough and tumble off the top, maybe even a double jump in the air. And I don't want to just tell you about that, I want to actually show you. So let's revisit Jelena and Kishar as they go through the canyons of Ashfang. So there's that slide. She does a little double jump in the air. Here's that vault. You don't have to push any extra buttons for that. It just happens when you encounter them, so does the slide. Now, a lot of the different classes have special abilities that can be triggered. The wizard has a teleport ability. And the warrior can leap. All the different classes have different abilities. You can also gain items that allow you to have cool movement systems. This is the boots of the Zephyr, which allow them to glide through the air. Little flash. Watch the Karen now. That's his sprint. like where the characters are looking. The way the world looks, the way the characters look, the special effects, all of that stuff, that's all coming along really well. We're very happy with where it is. But none of those things are what make this game different than any other game you've ever played before. We have this set of things that I call Holy Grails. And these are things that we have always wanted to put into a virtual world, an MMO. And, well, you know, there's lots of reasons why we didn't do these things: lack of resources, lack of time, maybe lack of intestinal fortitude. Whatever it was, we never got around to putting these things in. And so what I'm going to do right now is go through the series of 4 different Grails and show you exactly why they make a huge difference in our game. And the first Grail that I want to talk about is changing the core game. And what that means is, well, let's put it this way. For 35 years, we've been playing a lot of Dungeons & Dragons. I mean a lot of it. And when I say Dungeons & Dragons, what I mean by that is the core game of that is basically you pick a class, you go out and kill stuff, and unlock a tech tree of abilities, and we've all done that a lot of different times. So we didn't want to just reboot the lore and reboot the way the world looked and maybe add some new adventures. What we wanted to do was give you a whole new gaming experience that you could discover and explore as you played the game. And so to start that, we're embracing a new concept which we call multi-classing. Oh, you haven't heard it yet. What multi-classing is when you start the game, there's 8 different classes that you can pick from. Each class has a couple of weapons that you can choose and a handful of character abilities that go with it. And then as you go out into the world and you start exploring, as you do adventures and as you talk to different NPCs, you'll find opportunities to acquire new classes, to collect all these different classes that are out there. And there's more than 40 or so classes out there in the world for you to explore and find. And as you find those classes, you can play any of them at any time, and you can mix and match the different character abilities to create a class that's exactly what you want to play. So the more classes you find, the more you can customize your character. Now, your weapons make a big difference. They're one of the class-defining things in the game. So as you go through and you find these different classes, each class has a couple of weapons. Let's say, for example, that you pick the warrior. The warrior has like a big halberd and a longsword. And when he uses the halberd, he can use these big room-sweeping clearing attacks, or he can slam the half down on the ground and create a shockwave. But when he switches to the longsword, his abilities change. And he can then basically be able to attack a single thing and do a lot of damage, or perhaps do some melee blocks and parries. So depending upon what class you pick, your weapons will change to fit that class, and the abilities on those weapons are different. So as you change classes, you will also change your core gameplay, and you will constantly be exploring as you move through this game. And we have a lot of weapons. In fact, one of the things that you'll find as you go through and you start advancing your characters is that you can mix and match little pieces on those weapons to actually change what they do. And in fact, it's a very visual thing, and when we get around to talking about crafting, you'll see that the crafters have a lot to do with this game. Well, let's go through that for now. Okay, so we've talked about these abilities. Now it's time to see some of them in action. So let's start with the human wizard, Jelena. That's a chromosphere. Now, once in a while, she'll get bushwhacked and need to get out of dodge. So she has a vortex ability. And what the vortex does is it slaps all the enemies into the same spot she was, teleports her backwards, and then blows them up. Let's take a look at the warrior abilities also. Check in with Kishar. Now, Kishar has something I'm going to talk a little bit because he's quite loud. I'll talk a little bit. He has this really cool ability called Unstoppable Force, which is a charge attack. And it looks like this. And then that's Forceful Blow. Now, he also has a Shield Bash, which is great for knocking opponents back in an arc in front of him. It's also handy for sweeping up corpses. So anyway, that's some of the abilities in the game. And so that's the way the dynamic look of the game is, that's the way the special effects look and everything like that. And it kind of ties us over to Grail number 2. Now, Grail number 2 is something we have always wanted to do. As designers and game developers, there's never been a time in my 25 years of building games where we did not have this conversation at least once when we were starting a game. We wanted to be able to blow up anything, anytime, anywhere. So we built the entire world out of little teeny pieces called voxels. And we can literally blow up anything, anytime, anywhere. So the second Grail is destructibility, and it changes everything in the game. I'm going to show you some examples of how that looks. But first I want to briefly mention that because everything is made out of voxels, we can not only destroy those voxels, we can also build them up on the fly with constructibility. And that allows us to create all kinds of special abilities for the different classes. For instance, the human wizard has something called a crystal wall, and you can see that she can erect voxels straight out of the ground. Now the kobolds need to break that down, and when they do, she'll need to stop them by using upheaval. And upheaval can destroy bridges, you can block staircases, all kinds of different things. Now she's not the only one that can do this kind of thing. In fact, the warrior has one of my favorite abilities in the game called Whirlwind. Now he's going to leap over that chasm and do some damage. So that's destructibility, and it changes an amazing amount of stuff in the game. Because not only is it fun to just rip the crap out of a battlefield, but it's also amazing what we can do with scenarios at that point too. You can imagine a player versus player scenario where one side is protecting a castle and the other side has catapults, and they're destroying the keep and trying to get into the courtyard. Or perhaps like a player versus environment scenario, where perhaps there's a floating island moving through space, and if it gets somewhere bad, it's going to be bad for everybody around, so the players are literally trying to destroy it as it moves. This kind of destructibility allows us to create a game experience you've never had before. But it's still only Grail number 2. So, let's talk about Grail number 3. Grail number 3 is what we call a life of consequence. And what it really means is that we completely redid the way AI works in our game. But first, before we get to that, as you play this game, you're going to be making decisions. And those decisions will have consequences. What that means is the game is remembering everything you did. And it's reacting. The different NPCs, what quest opportunities are available, all those things are reacting to you based on what you have done. But it also changes what we can do inside the game, and that's where we get to talking about emergent AI. Now, the best and the easiest way for me to describe how that AI works is to run you through an example. So here's a concept piece of something we all know and love, Crushbone. Now, Crushbone's full of orcs. So let's take a look at the way orcs look in our game. That's an orc. Okay, now we all know a lot about orcs. They are what they are. But basically, they really want to get a lot of gold, and they want to do things that are really nasty to us. We know what they don't like is cities. They don't like to be around cities because cities have guards. And guards are just something that will always be bad for orcs. What they do like are lonely stretches of road where the occasional adventurer will walk by with a fat purse, and they can knock them over the head and take everything they own. Now, we know also that they don't like getting their butts kicked. It happens a lot, but they don't like it, okay? So that's the way we set up everything in our game. Now, in a normal MMO, you'd come out here, we would set up a static spawn camp next to that lonely road, and it doesn't matter whether it's launch day or 10 years after launch, you're gonna walk down that road, and there's gonna be that orc spawn camp, and every 15 minutes they're gonna spit out a new batch of orcs. That's the way these games have worked for a long time. But our game is different. What we do is we tag everything in the world with what it is. The game is constantly polling the world to find out where the guards are. How often people have gone down a lonely stretch of road to find out whether it's lonely or not. And so what we do is we create orcs and then we just release them into the world. And then it's up to the orcs to find the spots that they like. And so when they find that lonely stretch of road where there's no guards, they set up a camp. And they're going to stay in that camp, waylaying the occasional adventurer until one of a couple of things happens. The players might go to a city and alert the guards, and the guards might start patrolling down the road. That would be something the orcs don't like. The adventurers might stop going down the road, in which case there's no gold going back and forth, and the orcs don't like that either. Or the players might kick them around a lot. And they don't like that either. Either way, they're going to uproot stakes and they're going to start wandering around the world trying to find the things that they do like instead of the things they don't like. And when they find that spot, they're going to put down stakes again and start harassing people. Now that allows you, the players, to make absolute change in the world. As we tell you to go out on quests to do things like pacify the woods because there's nasty goblins in them, you can actually do it. You go out into the woods and you harass those goblins and push them back until eventually they don't want to be there anymore and they leave. Now it might not have the consequences you expected. You might go out there to pacify them and make the woods safe, but what might actually happen is that you tick off the Goblin King and he starts sending war bands to start pushing back at you. So you don't know what's going to be set up, and that's a big part of the game. So as you go through and you try to do things, the world will be reacting to what you've done, and you will be making change. Now that was a lot of talking, so let's see some more action. This is a combat scene where Jelena and Kishar are going to fight against an earth elemental. Players fall down the hole. So, okay, what you just saw is actually reasonably common in our game. There's all kinds of different areas where stuff like that might happen because of destructibility. You see, because we're not just building a surface world this time. We're building a world that has many, many, many tiers of depth to it. And in fact, it looks like this. So what we do is we procedurally create. Go ahead. What we do is we procedurally create all this fantastic content that's all the way through the world. And we know where everything is. We know where all the lost temples are and the ancient cities and all of that stuff. Because we have thousands and thousands and thousands of years of lore and archaeology that the designers have been building over this time. We know where everything is. We have all kinds of lore, and you'll be seeing a lot more of that when you go to the panels. But what that means is, as you explore through all these tiers of depth and stuff in the world, you're going to uncover all these dynamic quest opportunities. And as you explore through them and you choose what you want to do, and remember, the world is destructible, so you don't have to wait for us to reveal it to you. You can just pick up a pick and start making a tunnel. You can just explore through this whole area organically whenever you want to. And as you explore through this and you find these different quest opportunities, occasionally we'll have earthquakes or events in those quest opportunities will collapse caverns and stuff like that, and we'll recreate new areas procedurally. So as you explore through the world, it's constantly changing and you're constantly finding new content. And just as an example of that, let's go back to Kishar and Jelena, whatever her name is, Jelena, and re-get together with them while they're in the center of the world. Now, they couldn't find their way out, so they're just going to basically blow a hole in the crust below, and what they're going to find is a magma chamber. And that's Avoid Goliath. One thing's for sure, you'll always know where a battle was. Okay, so that leads us to Grail number 4. And this is a big one, because what we've had so far is destructibility, which is impermanent change. The world heals back after you destroy it a lot like that. And then there's also emergent AI, which allows you to actually change the world in a local area around you. But most MMOs, most virtual worlds that have ever been created, are generally very static. They never change over time, except for the occasional expansion pack, which might change a thing here or there. What we're doing is we're going to embrace a concept that we call permanent change. And the way that we're doing that is through a mechanism that we call rallying calls. And rallying calls are this really cool way to set up a story that takes a long time for players to work through, but constantly and permanently changes the world as you go through it. The easiest way for me to describe that is through an example. So we'll start with what we call the raising of Halas. So the Combine Accord sends you out here to go out and set up the city of Halas. And of course that starts out as a little tent city. And nobody knows what's in the area, so there's all kinds of little dynamic quest opportunities that appear. Just so you understand what a rallying call is, I think everybody here knows what a public quest is. All right, okay, cool. So with a rallying call, it's kind of like a public quest. It is different, but it's kind of like a public quest where every single person in the game is on that rallying call together at the same time. And it's going to take 2, maybe 3 months of real time for it to be accomplished. But the trick is, you don't know where the stages are. You don't know what events will trigger the story to move forward. And it's different on every server. You'll progress it a lot differently, and we'll show you that as it goes through. So when the Combine Accord tells you to go out here and establish that tent city, now you can ignore what they said and just explore out on your own. That's always an option. You can go do anything you want to. But if you want to participate in the rallying call, then you want to go to that tent city and start finding the little ways that you can participate in it. One of the ways that you might be able to do that is by more of a crafting sort of thing, by gathering resources, helping to build a palisade log wall around the city, so on and so forth. You might also get together with your friends and form a group and strike out into the woods to find out what's out there and possibly pacify any dangers that you find. And that's where the fun begins, because you don't exactly know why the next stage might trigger. It might be because you got the log walls up, or it might be because you pacified the goblins in the woods too greatly. Whatever it is, you trigger the next stage of the rallying call, and what might happen then is that the goblins start showing up and burning your outlying villages. Now that creates a whole new set of dynamic quest opportunities. You can help to repair the buildings, you can help to defend them against the goblins, you can try to find out where the goblins are coming from and pacify them out there. In addition, you might the townspeople might actually create a quarry because they want to build stone walls now that the goblins are burning stuff. So as the villagers dig down into the ground, they're going to uncover some of those tiers of depth I talked to you about, and things might start coming out of the tunnels. So then there's more quest opportunities, defending the quarry workers, exploring those tunnels, etc. Additionally, you might want to help build those stone walls and make that permanent change that I was talking about. Eventually, you're going to erect those stone walls and make a really great keep, or pacify the woods too much, and eventually you're going to really tick off that Goblin King. And he's going to go off and make some allies with the gnolls and the orcs, and they're going to come back with a big siege army. And when that siege army is sitting there, this is what we'd call, this as an example, is the final stage of that rallying call, is the siege of Halas. Now, there's all kinds of new quest opportunities, of course, stopping the catapults, fighting against the things, defending the walls, perhaps combating against espionage or preventing sappers from undermining your walls, so on and so forth. And then, of course, we have some randomness that comes in because the quarries got abandoned. Now the monsters might be freely coming out and not only messing with you, but also messing with the gnolls and orcs and goblins. So all of those things continue until eventually the players do enough damage to that siege army that they break its back and it retreats. Now that's the end of that rallying call. And what would happen at that point is we would roll out a new rallying call somewhere else in the world. And it's not always somewhere else in the world. It might be here again. We might destroy the city that you just helped build. All kinds of things can be happening on a regular basis. And the really cool thing about this is that after launch, a couple of years down the line, when one of your friends says, hey man, what was it like back at launch? You're going to say, oh my God, Halas didn't even exist back then. That was before the Dragon Army attacked. That was before the Civil War. You know, you'll have all these unique stories. And as the world progresses, it will constantly change. You'll be constantly finding new experiences. And in fact, it's almost impossible to create your same gameplay experiences if you roll up a new alt. Because honestly, not only do you have to make exactly the same decisions to even have a chance at that, because remember, the world's remembering everything that you've done. But the world has changed underneath you. So you're going to need to constantly explore and find out about this world as you move through it. Right? So that's permanent change and emergent AI and of course destructibility, as well as the fact that we changed the core game. And those four elements wrap together into something that we call EverQuest Next. And to be honest, that's enough, but that's not all. I mean, we're really happy where that game is. That's an MMO that every single one of us wants to play. We're really excited about it. We're we're jazzed to bring it to you. But there's something else that came along the way. Because when we started building all of this, well, before I get to that, let me show you one last scene of carnage. Because carnage is always fun. Sometimes the monsters can get big. Let's see what that Karen's running away from. That's the Iron Golem. We'll just hope Kishar was hiding in the basement. So anyway, like I said, we're really excited about that game. But as we built it, we had to build all kinds of special tools that allowed us to make something special. And by the way, that's Fiona in the game. As we started to build something special, we needed to assemble tools that none of us had ever used before because they had never existed before. If you're going to build an entire MMO out of voxels, you have to make some pretty cool tools. So we did that, and we started putting them together, and one of the things that came up that was really cool was, well, all the devs started spending all their weekends and their nights and stuff like that one-upping each other, trying to build something that was really cool, because the tools were that good. And it didn't take us long before we realized that what we really wanted to do was give you guys the same tools that we had so that you could help us build EverQuest Next. And we talked about it for a while, and the talks went on and on and on, and finally we came up with the idea that what we really wanted to do was make that experience something just incredibly special. And so what we're doing this winter is something that, well, we haven't announced until just now. We're releasing an entirely new game this winter, and it's called EverQuest Next Landmark. Now, surprise. So what EverQuest Next Landmark is, it's a huge collection of worlds that are all persistent, of course, just like any other MMO world that you're experienced with, you know, chats and guilds and all that other stuff. They're persistent worlds, but they're all procedurally generated. Every single one of them has continental land masses that are completely different than every other world. And what we're going to do is give you all the tools and all the materials that we're using to build EverQuest Next, and we're going to just let you go. You can literally build anything you want to, as long as customer service allows it. Anyway, that's what we're going to do. And the way that works, the way that Landmark works when you play it, is that we're going to give you a claim flag. And you're going to strike out into the world, and you're going to find a really cool spot to plant your flag, and then that's going to be your claim. And you can build anything on it that you want to. You can set up status privileges so that your friends can build with you. You can hook up different claims together, and of course you can earn multiple claims. But the idea is that as you explore across the world and you find the different things that you need to build with, you're going to be wandering through thousands of other players' imaginations. And of course, we set up the entire world so that it's tiered and stuff, and as you explore the world, what you're looking for are the resources and the recipes and the objects to take back to your claim and be able to build really cool things. We have crafting stations where you can use the resources and the recipes to create objects like, statues and doors and windows and things like that, and then you bring them back to your claim and you start erecting. Now, the tools are what make this a really, really fantastic experience. So, when you play a normal block building game, you expect this kind of tool, where you can stack blocks and stuff. And that's a great place to start, and of course we can do that too. But there's more. Because in our game, the voxel brush can change size, which allows you to very easily and very quickly create an amazing amount of detail. You can also use a bevel tool to cut different angles off the block, as well as a smoothing tool to actually change the vertices in real time to be able to look eroded or smoothed. And when I say smoothed, I mean smoothed. In a regular block building game, this is what a sphere would look like. In EverQuest Landmark, this is what a sphere looks like. Now I want you to think back. Everything that you've seen in the game so far is made of voxels. The image didn't change. There we go. Everything that you're seeing in the game so far is made of voxels. And so that scene right there is entirely made out of very, very small blocks. And everything that you've seen so far is also made out of those same voxels. So what we can create, you can absolutely create. And I'm telling you, it's actually a fun experience. Now, this is a time lapse of actually building. It represents about 22 minutes of real time. And as you can see, maybe they stack blocks to start with, but with those tools, it's really easy to make things look eroded and smoothed off, and it's very, very simple to use. Now, of course, we have Player Studio as well. And the cool thing about that is, of course, with EverQuest and EverQuest 2s, most of you are familiar with Player Studio, but just in case somebody out there in TV land hasn't heard of it, it's a mechanism by which players can create assets and then be able to put them up on the marketplace so that other players can buy them, and then the creators can actually make real cash from playing the game and making it a better experience for everybody else. In EverQuest Next and in EverQuest Next Landmark, the tools to do all that work are baked right into the game. So every single one of you can do it. And when you make something cool, you can put it up on Player Studio and let other people buy it for cash. And the opportunity to make real money out of a game like this is something that's definitely novel. And just to show you a little bit about how that works, imagine that I make a really cool tower, and it's all crenellated and it's kitted out and has really nice paintings and rugs and all kinds of stuff in it. And I package it up and I put it up on the Player Studio Marketplace. Now you might buy that because you want to build a castle. So you'd plunk my tower down a bunch of times and build a castle around it. Now when you package that castle up and put it up on Player Studio and you sell that thing, me, the creator of that tower, is basically going to get a little bit of royalties every time you sell one of those castles based upon what the percentage of my towers are out of your castle. So your creativity is always preserved, and you can do as much or as little of this as you want to. Now, one of the really cool things is we're very serious about that whole idea about you building EverQuest Next with us. And on every Landmark world, there's going to be at least one continent where we enforce the art direction of EverQuest Next. Basically, you can only build stuff there that would look good in Norath. And we're going to run all kinds of contests and promos along the way to encourage you guys to try your hand out at helping us build the new Norath. So like, for example, if we were building Firod and we decided that we needed a Mad God's Temple, And we thought it would be really cool if it had like this big amphitheater in it, and a couple other widgets and things that would be necessary for gameplay. What we might do is actually release those specs to you and allow you guys to compete against each other to try to come up with the best one. And you guys would be voting them up and down, and then we would look at the ones that you voted all the way to the top, skim off the best ones, and give them the opportunity to be in Norath on the day one that EverQuest Next launches. This is literally the first time that anybody has ever made a game where the players could create stuff and work with the developers on a regular basis all the way through the creation of the game to be able to create something that's magnificently new. And we're really excited about it. As we develop all the different materials and tools and concept art and stuff for the different areas, we're going to be releasing all of it to you. And then, as I said, occasionally inspire you with new ideas of things that we might like. And when you create it, we'll put it in. This is something that we're very serious about. And as we go forward, you'll see on EverQuestNext.com that we'll have a feature called Roundtable, where we'll actually be having regular discussions with you about what we want to do, what priority order we want to do it in, and all of those things so that you can participate with us and give us feedback on a regular basis. We want this to be your game just as much as it is ours. And that's EverQuest Next and EverQuest Next Landmark. Thank you.